But, as with all toxic family dynamics, it wasn't that simple. The sister might have been cut off, but their parents weren't going to make it easy. His mom immediately jumped to the sister's defense when he explained what she had done. His mom insisted she would never do something like that. She denied it outright, refusing to believe her daughter was capable of it. And when the sister herself later admitted it, the mom still minimized it, brushing it off the same way. It was just a joke. Instead of holding her daughter accountable, she turned on her son and his girlfriend. She accused Appa being the reason the family was falling apart. She said OP was the new variable, the one who was ruining their closeness. The tension only grew from there. When the couple skipped his sister's birthday dinner because it was also Op's mom's birthday, his mother lost it. She sent him message after message saying how heartbroken she was, how disappointed she was that he didn't choose his family over Op's. And when he didn't respond, his father stepped in with a text of his own. When you come home, don't bring your woman with you. That one hit hard. OP sat there in disbelief. These weren't just protective parents trying to keep peace between siblings. These were people who were actively trying to push her out, trying to punish their own son for daring to have a life outside their control. Eventually, things reached the point where his mom insisted on a family meeting. They all sat down together, and OP went in, determined to finally speak the truth. She confronted the sister directly, demanded to know why she had done it, why she kept inserting herself into their lives. But the sister didn't answer. She sat there, silent, letting her fiancé do the talking for her. He tried to downplay everything, tried to spin the story, but OP didn't back down. She made it clear. This was not normal, this was not healthy, and it was not going to continue. Her boyfriend finally backed her up. For once, he didn't sit quietly or try to smooth things over. He defended her, made it clear that the sister's behavior was unacceptable and that he wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. His parents didn't like it? Of course. They accused OP again. They tried to guilt him into folding, but he stood his ground. The meeting ended in tension. But for OP, it was a victory. For the first time, her boyfriend had chosen her over his toxic family. It wasn't easy after that. His mom still sent passive-aggressive messages. His dad still made comments about blood being thicker than water. But the big change was that his sister was finally out of their lives. The constant calls, the unannounced appearances, the obsessive monitoring, it all stopped. She was cut off, and OP could finally breathe. Looking back, OP said she still sometimes wondered what the real root of the problem was. Did his sister secretly have feelings for him? Feelings that crossed the line of sibling love into something darker? Or was she simply mimicking the controlling behavior of their mother, desperate to keep him from ever being independent? Maybe it was both. But in the end, the why didn't matter as much as the what. And the what was simple. The only way to save their relationship was to cut her off completely. Asterisk after that family meeting. Things didn't magically fix themselves, but something important had shifted. For the first time, Op's boyfriend had drawn a line in the sand. He had stood up to his parents and his sister, and he had chosen his relationship over the chaos they kept creating. It wasn't a clean break. His mom still tried to manipulate him with guilt. His dad still made comments about how family comes first, but the difference now was that he didn't fold, he didn't give in. He stopped letting them control him. And for OP, that felt like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. Life slowly began to calm down. Without the constant interference of his sister, their days were quieter, more peaceful. They could actually enjoy being together without worrying about her showing up uninvited or blowing up his phone with demands. They didn't have to explain every move they made or defend every choice to his mother. For the first time in their relationship, it was just the two of them. And OP realized how much of her energy had been spent fighting battles she never should have had to fight in the first place. But just because the noise had quieted didn't mean the scars weren't there. There were moments when OP would think back to the night of the prank calls, to the 15 times the phone rang with lies designed to destroy her trust, and she'd feel sick. She remembered the way his sister had walked into their room calling, Him, my love. The way she had stroked his chest, the way she acted like she was his partner instead of his sibling. Those moments were burned into her memory, and they made her shiver, even long after the drama had died down. She also thought often about his parents, about the way his mom had blamed her instead of holding her daughter accountable, about the ways Dad had told him not to bring her home. She realized that as much as the sister had been the immediate problem, the deeper issue was the family dynamic itself. His sister had learned that controlling, possessive behavior from somewhere, and it was clear it came from his mother. Opie knew that if they didn't put up boundaries, it would never stop. It wasn't just about the sister anymore. It was about protecting themselves from an entire family that didn't respect limits. So that's what they did. They stopped sharing every detail of their lives with his parents. They stopped running to them for approval. They made their own choices. And when his parents tried to interfere, they shut it down. It wasn't easy. Sometimes his mom would cry. Sometimes his dad would lash out. But little by little, they stopped letting it control them. And slowly, they began to imagine a future without all the noise. That future became even clearer when they started talking about marriage. For a long time, OP had been afraid to think that far ahead. She worried that his family would always be a shadow hanging over them, that they'd never get to have something normal. But once the sister was cut off, once her boyfriend showed he was willing to fight for them, her fears began to fade. They started planning to move out of their hometown to put physical distance between themselves and his family. They started imagining a wedding where his sister wasn't invited, where his parents wouldn't be allowed to run the show. They started to picture a life where it was just them, building something new on their own terms. And that, more than anything, gave up hope. Because, for so long, she had felt powerless. She had felt like no matter what she did, his family would always have the upper hand. But in the end, she learned that wasn't true. It wasn't about what his sister wanted, or what his parents demanded. It was about what they chose. And they chose each other. Looking back, Opie admitted she still didn't fully understand the sister's obsession. Maybe it really was something darker. Maybe there was a hidden crush. Maybe it was just toxic control. People online argued about it constantly. Some convinced it was romantic, others convinced it was just manipulation learned from their mom. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter. What mattered was that they stopped it before it destroyed them. What mattered was that her boyfriend finally saw the truth and cut her out. What mattered was that they refused to let toxicity define their lives. In the end, the sister stayed cut off. The calls stopped. The tracking stopped. The fake drama stopped. She faded into the background, left alone with her own fiancé and her own choices. And Opie and her boyfriend. They were free. Free to love each other without constant interference. Free to plan their wedding, their future, their escape. And if there's one lesson in all of it, it's this. Sometimes love isn't just about choosing each other. Sometimes it's about choosing to walk away from the people who want to tear you apart. Sometimes family isn't blood, it's who stands by you when everything else falls away. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is cut the cord, no matter how much it hurts, because the alternative is being chained forever too. Someone else's control. When you're in your early 20s, there's one thing that can make you feel like you finally have some independence, like you're actually stepping into adulthood. For some people, it's moving into their own place. For some, it's paying their own bills. But for a lot of people, it's getting their first car. That car doesn't just get you from one place to another, it represents freedom. It's late night drives with friends. It's not having to beg for rides. It's being able to leave when you want and go where you please. For OP, that car meant everything. He had worked for years, saved every extra bit of money from part-time jobs and side hustles, and finally bought himself a used car. It wasn't brand new. It wasn't flashy, but it was his. Every dent and scratch was his. Every mile on that car represented his effort, his sacrifice, and his independence. For a while, life was good. He could drive to work, to school, to hang. out with his friends without having to wait for the bus or rely on anyone else. It made him proud. Every time he turned the key in that ignition, it was a reminder that he had built something for himself. He thought his parents would be proud too, that they would see their son becoming an adult and respect that, but that's not what happened. Because one day, he walked outside and the driveway was empty. His car was gone. At first he didn't panic. Maybe his dad borrowed it to run an errand. Maybe his mom took it to the store. But when he asked them, they didn't even try to lie. They told him flat out that they had sold it. Just like that. Sold the car he had worked years to buy. The car that represented his freedom, and they said it so casually it made his head spin. He thought he must have misheard. He asked them why they would do something like that, and their answer was as cold as it was shocking. They said they needed the money. They didn't ask him if he needed the car. They didn't ask for permission. They just decided it was theirs to take, theirs to sell, theirs to profit from. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He reminded them that he had bought the car with his own money. He told them it was his, not theirs. But they didn't care. They told him he was too young to manage something like that anyway. They told him he should be grateful they were taking responsibility. They told him, we're your parents. Everything you have is ours. That sentence hit him harder than anything else. Everything you have is ours. It made his blood boil. He realized in that moment that they didn't see him as an adult. They didn't even see him as a person with his own rights. They saw him as property. And that car, something he had worked his butt off for, was just another thing they thought they could take. He was furious. He told them point blank that what they had done was theft. That if anyone else had sold his car without permission, he would have called the police. He demanded to know what they had done with the money. But they dodged the question, gave vague answers, and tried to turn it back on him. They accused him of being disrespectful. They said he was being ungrateful. They told him family should share everything and that he was selfish for making such a big deal about it. Imagine that for a second. Imagine working years to save for something, finally getting it, and then your own parents take it away and call you selfish for being upset. He couldn't wrap his head around it. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about trust. It was about respect. It was about realizing that the people who were supposed to protect him were the very ones betraying him. He felt powerless. The car was gone. The money was gone. And now his parents were gaslighting him, making him feel like he was in the wrong for even questioning them. He didn't know what to do. Part of him wanted to scream, to call the cops, to take him to court. Another part of him felt crushed, like he didn't even have the strength to fight. Because how do you go up against your own parents? How do you press charges against the people who raised you? That's when he turned to Reddit. He laid it all out. Every painful detail. How he had saved 4 years. How he had bought the car himself. How his parents sold it without his consent. And how they were now making him feel guilty for being upset. He asked the internet for advice, and the responses poured in. People were outraged. Comment after comment told him the same thing. This was theft. Plain and simple. One person wrote, family or not, stealing is stealing. If anyone else did this, you'd call the cops. Why should your parents get a free pass? Another person said, they don't respect you. They don't see you as an adult. And if you let this go, it won't stop with the car. Next, it will be your money, your things, maybe even your home. Others shared their own stories. One person wrote, my parents used to take money out of my savings account whenever they wanted. They told me it was for the family. But really, it was just control. It took me years to realize it wasn't love, it was abuse. OP read those comments and realized he wasn't alone. This wasn't just happening to him. There were other people who had gone through the same thing. People who had been betrayed by the very people they trusted most. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave him clarity. It made him realize he wasn't crazy. He wasn't selfish. He wasn't ungrateful. He was right to be angry. He was right to call it what it was. Theft. And if he didn't draw a line now, it would never end. Asterisk after reading through the comments, OP felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he finally had validation. Strangers from across the world, people who had no reason to lie to him, were telling him that his anger was justified. They told him he wasn't crazy, he wasn't being ungrateful, and he wasn't overreacting. They told him what his parents had done was theft, plain and simple. But on the other hand, that validation didn't change the fact that his car was gone. The money was gone, and the people who took it were his own parents. He kept thinking about the moment he walked into the driveway and saw it empty. That sinking feeling, the confusion, the hope that maybe it was just borrowed. And then the crushing realization that it had been sold. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. It wasn't just the act itself, it was the way they brushed it off. Like it was nothing. Like his years of work meant nothing. Like his independence meant nothing. Like he was still a child whose things belonged to them. That attitude cut deeper than anything. So he confronted them again. He told them flat out that they had stolen from him. That car was his! He had worked for it. He had paid for it. They had no right to touch it, let alone sell it. His parents didn't back down. His dad crossed his arms and said, "We're your parents. We know what's best for you. You don't need a car right now. You need to focus on school." His mom chimed in. And besides, the money was needed for the family. You'll have more chances to buy another one later. This is about helping everyone, not just yourself. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. They weren't even pretending to be sorry. They weren't even acknowledging that it was wrong. They were doubling down, painting themselves as the heroes, as if they had saved him from something. They acted like he should be grateful. That made his blood boil. He told them again that this wasn't theirs to take. They called him disrespectful. He told them it was theft. They called him ungrateful. It was like talking to a wall. No matter what he said, they twisted it back on him. That's when he started seriously thinking about legal action. If anyone else had done this, he wouldn't have hesitated to call the police. But when it's your parents, it's not that simple. He thought about how it would look, about how his extended family might react, about how awkward holidays would become. But then he thought about the principle. If he let this go, what message was he sending? That they could take whatever they wanted and he'd just accept it? That they had no boundaries they needed to respect? The comments on Reddit echoed in his mind. People told him to stand up for himself, that he had to draw the line now or it would never stop. Some even suggested small claims court. They told him to gather his proof, his bank statements, showing the payment, the title in his name. If he had it, anything that proved the car was his. They told him he had a case, and even if he didn't take it all the way to court, just threatening to might be enough to make them realize he was serious. But the thought of suing his parents made him sick to his stomach. He didn't want to go down that road if he didn't have to. What he wanted was respect. What he wanted was acknowledgement. What he wanted was for them to look him in the eye and admit they had crossed a line. But every time he tried to talk to them, they acted like he was being dramatic. His mom even said, "You'll thank us one day. We're just looking out for you." Thank them. Thank them for ripping away the one thing that gave him independence. Thank them for selling something he had worked years to afford. Thank them for treating him like a child when he was a grown man. The idea was insulting. It was gaslighting, plain and simple. They wanted him to believe that the betrayal was actually love. He didn't know what to do next. He started keeping more to himself. He stopped sharing details of his life with them, stopped telling them his plans, stopped letting them in. He realized that if they couldn't respect his boundaries, then he had to create distance. It hurt. These were his parents. He had grown up trusting them, believing they had his best interests at heart. Now, he saw them in a different light. He saw them as people who could betray him just like anyone else. The worst part was the way they tried to make him feel guilty for even being upset. His dad said, "You care more about a car than your family?" His mom said, "We sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you treat us." They twisted the narrative until he was the villain, until he was the selfish one, until he was the disrespectful child. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wasn't the one who had broken trust. He wasn't the one who had crossed the line. He wasn't the one who had stolen. he started thinking about moving out. About putting physical distance between himself and his parents. He realized that as long as he lived under their roof, as long as they had access to his things, he'd never be safe. Today, it was the car. Tomorrow, it could be his savings. Next year, it could be anything else they decided they had a right to. If he wanted to be free, he had to leave. Asterisk in the end, OP realized there was no way to fix what had already been broken. His parents weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to give him his car or his money back. And they weren't even going to admit they had done something wrong. What they had taken from him wasn't just a vehicle, it was trust. And once that was gone, there was no getting it back. So, he made his choice. He started saving again. Not just for another car, but for his escape. He decided he couldn't keep living under their roof. Couldn't keep pretending things were fine when they weren't. It was a painful decision, but it was the only way to protect himself. Sometimes family is supposed to lift you up, but sometimes family is the very thing that holds you down. And if you want to grow, you have to walk away. For OP, this was the wake-up call that taught him he had to set boundaries, even if that meant cutting ties with the people who raised him. And of course, Reddit had plenty to say about it. One top comment said, "That's not parenting, that's theft. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to steal from you." Another wrote, "If you let them get away with this, they'll never stop. You did the right thing by standing up for yourself." Someone else shared, "My parents did the same thing with my savings account when I was a teenager. It took me years to see that it wasn't about family, it was about control." And maybe the most heartbreaking one said, "It hurts worse when it's your parents, because you can replace a car, but you can't replace trust." So let me throw it over to you. If you were in Op's shoes, what would you do? Would you press charges against your own parents? Would you move out and cut ties, even if it meant losing the people who raised you? Or would you swallow the loss just to keep the peace? Be honest, because situations like this are never easy, and there isn't always a clean answer. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because, I love hearing your stories too. Asterisk now, friends. Before we wrap things up, let's talk about these stories for a minute. Because every single one of them left me thinking about how different people react when they feel control slipping out of their hands. The sugar mama thought she could buy love with gifts and guilt trips, but the second op said no. She turned into a storm. The sister thought she could chain her brother to her side with obsession and manipulation. But when he finally pushed back, her entire act crumbled. And the parents, they thought being family gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. But all they really did was push their son further away. Different situations, different people, but the same theme controlled disguised as love. And the comments online reflected that. People said the sugar mama was never really interested in a relationship, she just wanted someone she could dominate. Others argued that the sister wasn't just overprotective. She was acting like a jealous partner who couldn't handle her brother having a life outside of her. And the car story, that one hit home for a lot of people. So many shared their own painful memories of parents crossing boundaries, taking money, controlling their every move, all while pretending it was for their own good. It's eye-opening, and it proves that these aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns. But let me ask you something. If you were in these situations, what would you do? If you were 19 and had never dated before, would you have spotted the red flags with the older woman? Or would you have been flattered and trapped, just like Oprah? If your partner's sister barged into your relationship, tracking locations and making fake cheating calls, would you stay and fight? Or would you have walked away long before OP did? And if your parents sold something you had worked years to buy, would you call the police on them? Or would you swallow it to keep the peace? There's no easy answer here. And that's why I love hearing from you guys. Everyone has a different perspective. Some of you will say, cut them off. No hesitation. Some of you will say, family is family. You have to forgive. And some of you will share your own stories times when you ignored your gut times. When you trusted someone who didn't deserve it, or times when you finally found the courage to walk away. Those stories matter. They remind other people watching that they're not alone. that they're not crazy, that what they're going through happens to others too. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which story hit you hardest. W. S. It, the sugar mama. Because it showed how easy it is to confuse manipulation with love. Was it the sister obsession? Because it blurred the line between family and something darker. Or was it the parents selling the car? Because it struck too close to home about betrayal by people we're supposed to trust. And beyond that, what lessons do you take away from these? What red flags will you watch for in your own life? And before you go, let me leave you with this. Love should never feel like fear. Family should never feel like control. And gifts should never feel like chains. If someone in your life makes you feel trapped instead of free, that isn't love. That isn't care. That's control. And the bravest thing you can ever do is walk away from it, no matter who it is. Thank you for hanging out with me today and listening to these wild stories. If you enjoyed them, hit that subscribe button because we've got even more insane Reddit tailies coming your way. And hey, if you've got your own story, something you want to share, something that might help someone else out there feel less alone, drop it down below. I read as many as I can, and who knows, your story might end up helping someone who's stuck in the exact same situation right now. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and don't ignore those red flags. Because the truth is, your gut is usually right.